The countdown to the total solar eclipse has ticked down to just over 24 hours. Ahead on Face the State, the shadow millions and millions have been waiting for. The sun will cast the shadow of the moon across a wide swath of Ohio tomorrow afternoon. Ohio Emergency Management Director Sima Merrick joins me to talk about the plans in place for a smooth solar eclipse. She's also been helping to coordinate recovery efforts after the devastating tornadoes 3 weeks ago. Hundreds of Ohio families still need homes, and business owners are trying to rebuild. We'll look at what state leaders are doing to help them and so many others in 11 Ohio counties. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. Finally, it's almost here. The total solar eclipse is now only 1 day away. The highly anticipated event will cut a roughly 120-mile path of totality across Ohio, turning daytime into night. A total eclipse hasn't swept across our state in more than 200 years. Are you one of the millions who can't wait to experience it? Well, thousands have been getting an early sneak peek, no eclipse glasses needed. We went to COSI to see what its visitors have been seeing.
Yes, so we're walking inside the COSI Planetarium, and this is one of the largest planetariums in the Midwest. And what's so cool is this holds about 210 people, and we've been filling this up with people who are curious about seeing the eclipse show.
COSI Communications Director Christy Williams says 8 times per day since January 9th, the heavens have opened up to visitors on the dome of the planetarium. They lean back to soak up the sun in a show called Eclipse, The Moments of Wonder.
What's happening is the moon is actually blocking the sun, and for those in the path of totality, they're going to actually see the sun's corona, the sun's atmosphere, and it is going to be an amazing celestial experience.
This map shows the roughly 120-mile wide path of totality that will stretch across Ohio.
So those in totality will see totality for about 4 minutes max, but the actual eclipse, and as it's happening, will take a couple hours.
That's from when the moon just starts to pass in front of the sun until it completely clears it on the other side. You may remember the partial eclipse of 2017, but the state says the last total eclipse to cast a shadow across Ohio was way back in 1806.
This is something that's not going to happen in America until 2045 and not in Ohio until 2099.
So this is a rare chance to see a total solar eclipse, but whether the weather cooperates is the big uncertainty.
Do you have any poll as far as whether there will be any clouds on April 8th?
Okay, so I've been sending out good vibes since 2017, knowing this eclipse is coming out for sun, so I think so.
While we keep our fingers crossed for April 8th, a total eclipse will be clear to see at COSI 8 times a day through April 13th.
People are absolutely coming to COSI to see this eclipse show because the buzz is palpable.
And COSI is hosting its Epic Eclipse Experience tomorrow from 1 to 4 p.m. All of the outside events are free. They'll have thousands of pairs of eclipse safety glasses to hand out. Keep in mind, though, COSI is close to but not in the path of totality. And if you can't get to the fun or to the path of totality, you can watch it all unfold right here on 10 TV. Our special coverage begins at 2 p.m. tomorrow with 10 TV teams spread out across the state. Watching the eclipse could be spectacular, but also dangerous if you don't do it correctly. We have a critical prevention reminder from emergency medicine experts. Looking at the sun without eclipse glasses can be damaging to your eyes. Your cornea, the clear transparent covering of the eye, is at risk. You could also damage the retina, which allows us to see light and shape. A just-released study from the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center reveals that nearly 30% of Americans didn't know looking at a solar eclipse without the protection of ISO-certified eclipse glasses is dangerous.
So these aren't going to be something that you're going to be able to drive with on and look at the eclipse. You know, you have to have some plan. And the other thing that is important is that you wear the glasses. So I think people want to look around the glasses or take them off, and that's okay during totality. But even a little bit of sunlight, and this is dose dependent.
Dr. Command says the number of times you take them off during the eclipse, the more damage your eye is going to suffer. Joining me now to talk about the statewide preparations for the solar eclipse is Sima Merrick, the Executive Director of the Ohio Emergency Management Agency. Director Merrick, thank you for being here today.
Sure, Doug. Thanks for having me.
All right, big event finally coming up tomorrow. How long has the planning been going on for this?
So we started planning in 2021, right? Feels like yesterday, but we are planning since 2021. And in that planning and preparation period, we want to make sure that the most and first part of planning is preparedness, right?
Right.
So we want to prepare people, first responders, business owners, to understand and know the influx of tourism and people who may be coming to our state, as well as our own residents.
And why so long? Does it take that long to coordinate with all those different organizations, agencies, and individuals you've been talking about?
Yeah, so Doug, in the planning process, we look at reports from other states that have had eclipse come through their areas. And we look at their lessons learned, and then we start to talk them and adapt them and hope that our state agencies, our local entities, our local emergency managers kind of adjust to those lessons learned to make our experience and what we do here and how we handle that a better viewing experience.
So what is the focus of the Emergency Management Agency now, like with the eclipse leading into it?
Yeah, so as we moved out of preparation, we're looking at our EOC, our operations staff, getting folks into the EOC that are state agencies, all the folks that will sit in there, coordinate, watch, monitor in unison in case we would have problems. There's a chance there's problems. So we're going to have congestion. We're going to be monitoring the weather. And everyone in that room can be and talk about and coordinate how they could help if there was someone or something that needed to be shared, such as a resource.
Yeah, and so you're not going to be worried about having your eclipse glasses because you're going to be in the command center, I assume.
Well, hopefully
right?
I'll get to see it, but yes, I will be in the command center.
So what kinds of things are you most concerned about that could happen leading up to Monday and Monday before and after the event?
So we're monitoring the weather. So the weather is one thing we're worried about, not only for the ultimate viewing pleasure, but also about travel. And then the second is congestion. So those kind of go together, right? I mean, on a good day, congestion can be frustrating, a good weather day. But if there is some type of inclement weather, we worry about that. We worry about, do we have things in place? Does that increase the slowdowns for people to see it? If people slow down, are they just going to stop to look at it, which is not recommended. Do not stop on the roadways. Get off the roadways. But those are probably two of the most. Monitoring of the weather, what the weather will be like, and then dealing with just some congested areas.
And are you concerned that people will be trickling into their destinations to see this? I imagine there'll be a last second rush, of course, but then the concern is that everyone's going to try to leave at once.
Yeah, so lessons learned have taught us that that's what happens, right?
From other states.
Right, from other states. We've had people say, it took me 3 hours to get to where I wanted to see it, and it took me 9 to get home. Because when it's done, it's done. People jump in their cars and they want to go. So one of the things that our message is, if you have the opportunity to stay late and enjoy Ohio's tourism, enjoy the festivals, all the different events that are scheduled, stagger your times in leaving to help ease that congestion.
Those lessons learned from other states, is it people running out of gas or not having their medications, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think that people didn't necessarily realize that they would get maybe delayed. So if they took their pets, they may not have had medications or water or stuff in the car. They didn't pack snacks. Some people maybe took off, in some cases, without full tanks of gas. So then the lines were long, right, to get gas. That's part of that planning process. For 2 years, we've worked and talked to all the different businesses. Be sure that you're ready for this. Stock your shelves, fill the tanks, don't maybe fill half full, fill all your tanks. And just messaging all the people that could have some type of impact from a lot of the travel that we're expecting.
with all these other places, like having tow trucks strategically located, or ambulance services, those types of things. How is that coordinated?
So we coordinate with our local emergency management agencies, as does law enforcement with sheriffs and police departments. The same thing with emergency medical hospitals. So part of the activation of the Emergency Operations Center is to bring people in from all the different state agencies who have those relationships directly with the locals. The locals then are the ones, the local governments and communities, who have those established relationships with their first responders. So they handle stuff locally, and if they have additional needs, then they request it up through their normal channels, through their what we call Blue Sky Day partners. And they may say, hey, we're kind of running out of this, and we could use some, or we could use some additional assistance with personnel. And that's how that system works. So at the State Emergency Operations Center, we have all these desks, Doug, that state agencies and people will fill to do this and coordinate in unison and communicate what's happening out there.
Just the coordination and collaboration just seems just so impressive, that what has to actually happen to make this go as smoothly as possible.
Right. It is. We are becoming a well-oiled machine.
It's only a little more than 24 hours now until the eclipse actually happens. A lot of people are probably at their destinations if they're going to campgrounds, or they've booked motel or hotel rooms and whatnot. But from this point on, a lot of people will try to drive or to do what they can to see or get as close to the path of totality. What's your last minute advice for those who want to have a good experience?
So the first thing I tell you is, if you're traveling, make sure that you have everything that you need to take with you, snacks, water, those kinds of things. Fill your tank, your gas tank, and top it off frequently if you have the ability to do that, because you don't know what will be on the backside of it. The other thing is, I would say, pack your patience. We know there's going to be some congestion, but just pack your patience and be ready to enjoy just a wonderful event.
Wear your eclipse glasses, see the eclipse, then take a deep breath.
That's right.
All right. Well, Director Merrick is going to stay with us this morning to talk about recovery efforts in the wake of the devastating tornadoes 3 weeks ago as well.
It breaks my heart. This is our community.
Coming up next, the heartbreaking reality and the resilience in Indian Lake, and what the state is doing to help those affected. And later,
what are the animals going to do?
Yes, how will the elephants, manatees, and red pandas react when day becomes night tomorrow? That's what experts at the Columbus Zoo want to know. Hear from them later. Welcome back to Face the State. Governor Mike DeWine returned to Indian Lake last week to hear from local leaders who were dealing with the aftermath of the deadly tornado on March 14th. He got an update on the recovery and rebuilding process and gave an update on the status of state and federal aid. He says more help is in the works. The mayor of Lakeview told me she is both encouraged and concerned about what the governor shared.
As you can see, there's not much left of the homes, and some of them are completely off the foundation.
Lakeview Mayor Elaine Fagan Moore walks us through her own neighborhood, a neighborhood devastated. So is she.
It breaks my heart. This is our community.
The mayor's home was damaged but survived the EF3 twister on March 14th. Her focus is on the people she serves.
It's one thing that you survive it. There's that traumatic experience. But then it was their home, and this is where they were raising their children.
A state representative says about 250 housing units are still needed for families and individuals who lost their homes. At a Tuesday morning news conference, Governor Mike DeWine said he and legislative leaders are working on a plan to give state help to people and businesses affected. He says that could come in the form of grants, money to get them back on their feet.
You have really two different things. You've got the housing issue, how you deal with that. Then you've got the long run. How do we help people so that they can get back up and have a long-term plan?
Did you find any encouragement in what the governor talked about today?
I did from what he was sharing from a state level, but I was also very concerned when he mentioned FEMA.
Last week, the governor asked for federal disaster assistance from FEMA for the 11 Ohio counties hit by tornadoes.
We are told by FEMA that a decision could take a long time before we even get a decision.
And there's no guarantee President Biden will declare a federal disaster.
We hear a lot of people say they're going to rebuild. This area will be rebuilt. Do you believe that?
I think there's a hope. I always say hope dies last in our lives.
The governor says he and legislative leaders should have a better idea about the state plan to help people in less than 2 weeks now. Joining me again now to talk about the recovery effort is Sim Merrick, the executive director of the Ohio Emergency Management Agency. Director Merrick, you've been to Indian Lake at least a couple times that I know of. I was there at the same time you were. What went through your mind that first time when you saw the damage that the tornadoes had caused?
So, Doug, I was watching it the night before, and I quickly realized it was gaining some strength. When we got over there in the morning hours of the following day, it is significant tornado damage, right? There's the damage, and tornadoes are so weird that in one area it's complete devastation, and then a couple streets over there's just some shingles off. So it was immediately that thought for me of there's debris, there's business damage, there's individuals who have damage, and that the recovery immediately begins, especially right along with life safety. And that's kind of what I was thinking about.
And then you were there again this past week, and you see the difference in what struck you as far as how much has happened already in those 2.5, 3 weeks since between your visits?
So the resilience of the community was the very first thing. Second, the volunteers and the people who came together, the local leaders, the community, the county, folks from state agencies helping to assist them in their recovery, their immediate recovery, debris removal and those types of things. So to see it when we were there this week, there has been lots and lots of work and cleanup done.
What's your office focusing on in terms of the recovery?
So we assist the local emergency management and long-term recovery committees as they are looking at the process of recovery. So are unmet needs being addressed? How can we help and support unmet needs for businesses, individuals, homeowners, and are people getting into shelters that have been identified? The locals best identify that because they know their community.
Talk about housing a little bit. What are the biggest needs right now and the focus from here and then going forward?
So I think first it's that temporary housing while people identify if they're going to rebuild or if they're going to rent. Are they going to stay in the area? Which the local leaders and all of us want folks to stay where they're most comfortable and their children are going to schools. So that, I think, is the first need. The second need is then what's the plan for long term? What's the housing plan? What's available? What's available to be rebuilt on? And how does that work best for the community?
The governor had mentioned in his news conference that one of the options that he and legislative leaders were talking about was perhaps providing grants. That's not set in stone, but that is one thing they're talking about. You had a lot of experience working with grants and overseeing that type of process. How helpful are grants in situations like this, and even though we can't specifically say that's what's going to happen in this case? So
grants help people get back on their feet. They don't completely make them whole, but it helps them really fill their basic needs, the gap for their basic needs, right? So grants can help them get stuff back, help them replace some clothing, do some immediate repairs if the home's repairable, help them identify where they're going to go and give them some money to restart. So those grants are helpful, especially as people are looking at this monumental task of how do I do this? And how do I do this if I don't have a bank account?
And finally, the governor did apply for federal aid through a presidential disaster declaration for 11 counties impacted by tornadoes. Where does that stand, and is it likely that Ohio could get some federal help?
So it's in the process, right? So the request for a major disaster declaration goes through certain steps and ultimately goes up to the president's office, to the White House. So it's in that process. I'm not quite sure exactly where, but it's in the process being reviewed and having the teams that were here from FEMA and the Small Business Administration writing their summaries. So as we wait for that, we continue to identify through long-term recovery committees and a lot of state agencies how they can best assist in that interim gap while we're waiting to hear back from the federal government.
And I understand it could be quite a while until we actually get an answer one way or the other.
Yeah, it could be.
All right. Director Merrick, thank you so much for your time today talking both about the eclipse and the tornado recovery. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
And when we come back, we turn our attention back to the eclipse. What will the critters do when the sun creeps behind the moon tomorrow? Next, what experts at the Columbus Zoo will be looking for, and what you might expect from your own pet at home. Many of us humans will swap our sunglasses for eclipse glasses tomorrow, but what about animals? 10 TV's Carla Rogner talked with experts about how animals could react to the sudden darkness both in the wild and at home.
The Columbus Zoo will be in the path of totality when the solar eclipse crosses over Ohio, and zookeepers have one question.
What are the animals going to do?
On April 8th, there will be a little under 2 minutes to find the answer.
Want to see if a lot of these animals that really live on daylight, will they think it's dark, and will they go into nesting, or will they go to sleep, or will they be stressed out? We don't know.
But the preparation has already begun. Zoo staff and Ohio State researchers have been studying behavior of certain animals, like the red panda, bears, and manatees, to see if the different animals react when their habitats suddenly go dark.
There's kind of this predator versus prey idea, where prey we tend to think of being more skittish and jumpy because things are literally out to eat them, so they're more jumpy around new stimuli. And that might mean that a new stimuli like an eclipse would make them react stronger, but it might not. But predators are also very visually have very strong visual cues because they have to find prey. So they're also very reliant on their eyes, and a visual stimulus like a darkness during the day might cause them to react strongly as well.
One thing is for certain, zoo animals won't need eclipse glasses, and neither will your furry friends at home.
Right, they might gaze up at the sky in general, but we don't see them staring at the sun the way we humans do.
Dr. Lilly says pets can stay on their usual routines, but their behavior might change too if they're easily excited.
It's a little bit like the 4th of July or during cookouts at Labor Day, where everybody's outside, everybody's doing things, there's just lots of extra activity. And if that's something that your pet is concerned about, then it's going to be concerning during that time as well.
Whether they're at the zoo or in your backyard, the eclipse could cause some confusion and make animals want to get ready for bed.
But if you want to nap, you get to nap. Let's let them nap. They don't need to be awake to see it.
In Powell, Carla Rogner, 10 TV News.
The zoo will continue to study the animals for 2 weeks after the eclipse, so it will be a bit longer until we find out the results of this study. And again, if you're not heading out to see the eclipse somewhere, be sure to join us for our special coverage tomorrow beginning at 2 o'clock. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you next Sunday at 11:30.